The forest was quieter than usual. Even for Forks, the silence carried a strange weight, as if the pines themselves were holding their breath. Renesmee Cullen stood at the edge of the clearing, her golden-brown eyes scanning the darkness between the trees. She was used to stillness, used to the way her senses picked up the slightest shift in the world around her, the snap of a twig, the flicker of a shadow. But tonight, there was something else. Something watching. Something old. She tightened her coat around her shoulders, though the cold had never really bothered her. Half human, half vampire, her blood carried both warmth and immortality. But lately, warmth felt foreign. Lately, everything felt different. Renesmee. The soft voice broke the silence, familiar and steady. Her father, Edward, appeared beside her in an instant. His pale face glowed in the moonlight, his amber eyes searching hers. "You sense it too?" She didn't need to answer. The unease in her chest had been building for weeks. A constant whisper in her bones. The forest wasn't just quiet, it was afraid. Her mother, Bella, stepped from the shadows. Her beauty was sharper than ever, her presence calm but fierce. "Something has changed," she said softly, though her words carried weight. "The air is wrong. The Volturi aren't behind this. It's something else." Renesmee glanced back toward the trees. The darkness seemed thicker tonight, as though it had substance. It wasn't just absence of light, it was watching, reaching, pressing closer. She swallowed. "It's been following me." Edward's jaw tightened. He had been listening to every thought around them, yet this presence, it was beyond him. That, more than anything, unsettled him. "Then it's not of this world," he muttered. "And not bound by thought." The unease twisted deeper in Renesmee's chest. She wasn't a child anymore, her body had matured rapidly, reaching near adulthood in less than 2 decades. But inside, she often felt caught between worlds. Not fully human, not fully vampire. Tonight, that fracture inside her felt more vulnerable than ever. She whispered, "What if it wants me?" Neither of her parents spoke. The silence between them was answer enough. Later, in the Cullen house, the family gathered. The great windows looked out onto the black forest, the rain streaking down in silver lines. Carlyle's calm face remained thoughtful, but even he couldn't mask his concern. "There are records," he said finally, his voice low, "of something older than the Volturi. Older than even the first covens. A presence that lived in the spaces between our kind. A hunger without a name. It was thought to have died out centuries ago." Jasper, standing stiff in the corner, shook his head. "I've felt fear before, but what's outside tonight isn't fear, it's worse. It's the absence of anything living. Like the world itself recoiling." Renesmee's heartbeat quickened. She hated the sound of it in the silence of the room, like a drum marking her difference. "Why now?" she asked. "Why after all these years of peace?" Carlyle's eyes softened, pity mixing with worry. "Because you exist, Renesmee. You are new. A bridge between 2 worlds that were never meant to be joined. Perhaps you woke something." Her chest ached at his words. She wanted to believe her existence was a gift, that she was proof peace was possible. But deep inside, she had always wondered, was she an accident, or a prophecy? Before anyone could answer, the lights flickered. Every immortal head in the room snapped toward the windows. Outside, the forest moved. Not in the way wind bends branches, but as if the trees themselves recoiled from something passing through them. The glass shivered with a low vibration, a hum too deep for human ears. Renesmee pressed a hand to her chest, her skin prickling cold. A whisper brushed her mind. Not words, just hunger. A hunger so raw and endless it turned her stomach. She staggered, gasping. Edward was at her side in an instant, his hand gripping hers. His eyes were wild with a fear she had never seen in him before. It's reaching for her, he hissed. The shadows along the tree line thickened, coiling upward like smoke. And then, from the black, two shapes emerged. Not wolves. Not vampires. Their forms shifted, blurred, like shadows wearing the memory of flesh. Renesmee couldn't breathe. The thing without eyes stared directly at her. That night, long after the shadows melted back into the forest, Renesmee lay awake in her room. The house was silent, though she knew no one else slept. She pressed her hand against her reflection in the mirror, her skin warm against the cold glass. She thought of Carlyle's words, perhaps she had awakened something. And in the silence, the whisper returned. This time, it formed into words, low and broken. Blood of two. Key of all. Renesmee froze, her pulse racing in her throat. Somewhere deep in the forest, something smiled. Renesmee woke to silence. Not the gentle kind of silence that came with dawn in Forks, but a heavy, suffocating one. Even the rain had stopped, as if the sky itself refused to move. Her chest burned with the memory of the whisper. Blood of two. Key of all. The words had burrowed into her mind, and no matter how many times she told herself it had been a dream, she knew better. She pulled back her curtains. The forest loomed, darker than it had ever looked. Something about the trees unsettled her, the angles of the branches felt wrong, as though they bent in silent worship of something unseen. Downstairs, voices hummed in tense conversation. She followed them, finding the Cullens gathered around the long glass table. Edward's tone was sharper than usual. It spoke to her, he said, pacing like a caged predator. Not to me, not to you. To her. That means it knows. Bella's voice trembled beneath her steel. It's targeting her. Our daughter. Whatever this thing is, it wants her for a reason. Renesmee stepped into the room. You're talking about me like I'm not here. Every gaze snapped toward her. Carlyle sighed, his voice calm but heavy with gravity. Renesmee, last night confirmed something I feared. This is not simply a wandering spirit or rogue vampire. It is ancient, something that predates even our understanding of what we are. A force without form. A hunger that adapts. She crossed her arms, trying to mask the fear crawling through her veins. Then tell me why it's following me. Edward's eyes, golden and filled with torment, met hers. Because you are the only one like you. Half human, half immortal. You're proof of possibility. And possibility is power. The words clung to her like chains. She wanted to argue, but before she could, Alice stiffened. Her eyes widened, pupils dilating as a vision clawed its way through her mind. The room froze. Alice's voice came out in a whisper. The forest isn't empty. It's full. Full of them. They've been waiting, watching. And when the sky bleeds red, they'll take her. Renesmee's blood went cold. Them? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alice blinked rapidly, the vision loosening its grip. Her hands shook. Shadows. Many shadows. They don't move like us. They don't feed like us. They consume. And once they start, nothing stops them. That evening, Jacob arrived. His broad frame filled the doorway, the warmth of his presence wrapping around Renesmee like a shield she hadn't realized she needed. His russet skin gleamed against the dim light, his dark eyes narrowing when he saw the strain on her face. What happened? He demanded. Edward spoke coldly. Something is hunting her. Jacob's jaw flexed, his hands curling into fists. Then it dies. But Carlyle shook his head. No blade, no claw, no fire can kill what has no body. This isn't an enemy we fight with teeth or strength. It is something different. Jacob's eyes softened when they fell on Renesmee. Then we'll protect her. Whatever it takes. For the first time all day, she felt her heart steady. Yet deep down, she knew protection wouldn't be enough. Not from something that could enter her mind, speak through her blood. That night, the nightmare came. She dreamed she was standing in a clearing, the moon swollen and red above her. The forest bent inward, trees groaning as if dragged by invisible hands. From the shadows, the shapes emerged again, blacker than night, taller than wolves, more fluid than vampires. Their bodies flickered like smoke, but their mouths were endless voids, tearing wider with each step. They whispered in unison, a sound like broken glass. Blood of two. Key of all. You will open the way. She turned to run but found the ground soft, sinking beneath her feet. She looked down. Not earth, flesh. A field of pale, writhing hands reaching upward, clutching at her ankles. A scream tore from her throat. And she woke. Her room was dark, moonlight spilling across the floor. She pressed a hand to her chest, her heart hammering, when she noticed it. The window was open. Her breath caught. She never left it open. Ever. Slowly, she turned toward it, dread clawing up her spine. The curtains shifted in the cold night air, though the room itself smelled wrong, burnt metal, damp stone, rot. Then she saw it. In the reflection of the glass, not in the room itself, two hollow, burning eyes stared back at her. Not her reflection. Not her face. The whisper came again, curling into her ear like smoke. Soon. Renesmee stumbled back, her legs trembling. But when she blinked, the reflection was gone. The room was empty. Only the whisper remained. The next morning, Renesmee's body still trembled with the echo of the whisper. She had hidden the truth about the reflection from her parents. Some part of her knew it would only make their fear worse. But the memory clung to her like ice, those burning eyes in her own window, the words soon laced with hunger. Downstairs, the Cullens were restless. Edward's pacing hadn't stopped, Jasper's agitation made the room vibrate, and Alice had withdrawn into a near catatonic stillness, as if afraid any new vision would shatter her mind. Bella sat quietly by Renesmee, her hand resting on her daughter's shoulder. Though she looked calm, Renesmee could feel her tension radiating like heat. Then Jacob stormed in. His entire body shook as he spoke. One of ours is gone. The room froze. Renesmee's breath caught. Gone. Jacob's fists trembled. Leah. She went out on patrol last night. No scent trail. No sign of struggle. Just, gone. A silence heavier than death filled the room. Leah was strong. A fighter. For her to vanish without a sound meant whatever had taken her was something beyond the wolves' instincts, beyond their strength. Edward's eyes narrowed. I didn't hear her thoughts. Not even a flicker. It's as if she was swallowed whole. Jasper's voice was low, haunted. That's exactly what it feels like. Not death, not pain, just absence. Renesmee felt a chill crawl across her skin. She remembered the dream, the field of hands pulling her under. Was it a dream? Or a vision of what this thing did to its victims? By evening, the uneasy alliance of wolves and vampires met in the clearing. The air buzzed with tension, the fragile true stretched thin by fear. Sam's massive wolf form paced, eyes flashing with barely restrained rage. His voice rumbled when he shifted back into human form. First Leah, then who? How do we fight something we can't even see? Carlyle's calm tone tried to steady them. We must observe, adapt. Violence will not solve this if violence cannot touch it. Jacob snarled, so what, we just wait while it picks us off one by one. The wolves bristled, and even Emmett clenched his fists, his usual humor drowned by anger. Renesmee stood in the middle, all eyes on her when she spoke. It doesn't want any of you. It wants me. The words hung like thunder. Her voice cracked, but she pushed forward. It whispers to me. It told me I'm the key. That I'll open something. Maybe a doorway. Maybe worse. Gasps rippled through the circle. Sam glared at Edward. You kept this from us. Edward's lips curled into a snarl. Would you rather panic spread through your pack before we knew the truth? Jacob moved in front of Renesmee, protective, his chest rising and falling with fury. Enough. Blaming each other won't help. If Nessie is what it wants, then we stay by her side. No shadows take her while we breathe. Before Carlyle could respond, Alice shuddered violently. Her eyes glazed, her body trembling with the sudden force of a vision. Renesmee reached for her, but Alice's lips parted in a broken whisper. They're already here. The forest erupted. From the tree line, shadows surged. They were faster than wolves, faster than vampires, moving in jagged bursts like broken film. Their bodies shifted between shapes, half-formed, fluid, screaming with mouths that stretched too wide. The clearing exploded in chaos. Wolves leapt, snapping jaws tearing at smoke that only reformed. Vampires struck with inhuman strength, but every blow landed on nothing. Renesmee staggered back, the air thick with screams, snarls, and a sound beneath it all, the hum of hunger, deep and endless. One shadow lunged at her. Its form split into claws, reaching for her chest. She raised her hand without thinking. A surge of heat burst from her palm, light rippling like a shockwave. The creature shrieked, not in pain, but in recognition. The others froze. Hundreds of burning eyes turned toward her. Jacob roared, shifting midair, tackling the shadow away before it could touch her. But the rest did not advance. They circled. Watching. Waiting. Edward was suddenly at her side, his voice sharp. They don't want to kill you, Nessie. They want to take you. The shadow's whispers rose, filling the clearing like wind through dead leaves. Blood of two. Key of all. The door must open. Renesmee's knees buckled. The voices weren't just in her head anymore. Everyone heard them. The wolves whimpered, trembling, their ears pressed flat. The vampires hissed, eyes wide with horror. Carlyle's face went pale. This is no longer myth. This is real. The shadows pressed closer. The circle tightened. And then, as quickly as they had come, they retreated. Melting back into the trees. Leaving behind only silence. The clearing was torn apart, the earth scorched where the shadows had touched. Leah was still gone. And now, everyone knew the truth. This wasn't just about Forks. It was about Renesmee. That night, as the Cullens and wolves licked their wounds, Renesmee stood alone at the window again. Her reflection stared back at her, tired, pale. Then her lips in the glass curled into a smile she hadn't made. And the whisper came once more. Soon, child. The door will open, and through you, we will return. Renesmee gasped. Her reflection's eyes burned red. The glass cracked. The shattered glass still lay across Renesmee's bedroom floor. Carlyle had swept the shards aside, but no one dared replace the mirror. She didn't want them to. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it, her own reflection smiling with someone else's hunger. Her parents hadn't left her side since the attack in the clearing. Jacob lingered too, always near, pacing the house with restless energy, his wolf instincts gnawing at him. The air inside the Cullen home was thick with dread, as though the walls themselves strained to keep out the thing pressing against them. Renesmee sat at the dining table as Carlyle opened an old, leather-bound book. Its pages were brittle, ink faded to a brown haze. This, Carlyle said, voice steady but low, is one of the oldest texts I've ever collected. It predates the Volturi by centuries. The language is fragmented, but it speaks of a covenant. Renesmee leaned forward, her throat dry. A covenant with what? Carlyle's eyes flicked to hers, and for the first time, she saw real fear in them. With shadows. He turned the page slowly, revealing sketches scrawled in desperate hands, twisted shapes, half-formed figures devouring entire villages. Long before covens sought power, long before werewolves rose to hunt us, there was a hunger. Not vampire, not human, not wolf. Something older. It lived in the spaces between night and blood. The first vampires feared it. Some even worshipped it. Jasper's voice cut through, sharp. You mean they made deals? Carlyle nodded grimly. Yes. They believed these shadows could grant them strength, protection. But the covenant demanded a price, a life born of two worlds. A vessel neither mortal nor immortal. A bridge. Renesmee's chest tightened. The words burned like chains. A hybrid. The room went silent. Bella's hand clamped onto her daughter's. No. You are not a vessel. You are our daughter. You are you. But Edward's expression said what his lips would not. He had heard it, too. The covenant had been waiting centuries for her. The wolves refused to stay silent. That night, a patrol went out, Sam, Paul, and Quill, determined to track whatever had taken Leah. Hours passed without word. Then, as dawn broke, a howl split the air. Renesmee felt it before she heard it. A ripple of dread through her bones. She and Jacob were the first to reach the forest's edge, the others close behind. The clearing smelled of iron and ash. Quill was on his knees, his human form trembling. His chest was streaked with claw marks, but the blood wasn't his. It was Paul's. Or what was left of him. Renesmee's stomach lurched. There was no body, no corpse. Only his shadow burned into the ground like black fire had scorched it there. His howl still echoed faintly, though his mouth was gone. Sam shifted back, his body shaking. They didn't kill him, he whispered hoarsely. They took him. Pulled him out of himself. The air grew colder. The trees bent inward. Groaning like old bones. And then the whispers came, crawling across their skin. Blood of two. Key of all. Open the way. The wolves snarled, ears flat, but every sound was swallowed by the chorus. The shadows slithered along the tree line, dozens of them, eyes glowing like coals. Renesmee's knees buckled. She pressed her hands to her ears, but it didn't matter. The voices weren't outside, they were inside. Filling her veins, her breath, her thoughts. Jacob caught her before she fell. His voice was raw, desperate. Nessie. Fight it. Her vision blurred. In the darkness behind her eyes, she saw it, a great gate carved of bone and flame, towering, pulsing, waiting. The shadows pressed against it like starving animals, clawing at the cracks. And in the center, a lock shaped like her heartbeat. The gate whispered. Open. She screamed. The shock of her voice ripped through the clearing like thunder. Light burst from her chest, a wave so bright it burned the shadows back. They shrieked, dissolving into smoke that curled into the ground. Silence followed. The forest was still again. But Renesmee collapsed. When she woke, she was in her bed, Bella clutching her hand, Edward leaning close, Jacob pacing with his fists tight. Carlyle stood over her, worry etched into every line of his face. You expelled them, he said softly. Your power drove them back. But only for a moment. They'll return. Stronger. Renesmee's lips trembled. I saw a door. A lock. It was me. Edward's voice cracked as he whispered, they don't just want you. They need you. Renesmee stared at the ceiling, the weight of fate pressing against her chest. She wasn't just their daughter anymore. She wasn't even just Renesmee. She was the key. And if the door opened, everything, human, vampire, wolf, would be devoured. Renesmee had never feared herself before. But now, every time she blinked, she wondered if she'd open her eyes to find something else looking out from behind them. Her family tried to comfort her. Jacob stayed at her side constantly, refusing to sleep. Bella sat close, fingers brushing Renesmee's hair, whispering words of reassurance. Edward never left the doorway, his face sharp with constant vigilance. But inside her, the whispers never stopped. At first, they were faint, like echoes from the woods. Then they began curling into her thoughts, twisting her dreams, filling the silence between heartbeats. Blood of two. Key of all. Door waits. Sometimes, her hands trembled. Sometimes, the light within her sparked without command, flickering at her fingertips like heat lightning. And sometimes, her reflection still smiled without her. On the third night after Paul was taken, the shadows returned. This time, they didn't linger in the forest. They came to the house. The windows blackened as if covered in tar. Every light flickered, every flame died. A sound like teeth chattering filled the rooms. Alice screamed first. Her vision had seized her violently, and she collapsed against Jasper's arms, convulsing. There in the walls, she shrieked, eyes wide and blind. They're inside. Jacob growled, his wolf rising just beneath the skin, but even his strength seemed useless against the crawling dark seeping across the floor. Renesmee stood frozen. She could feel it, like invisible hands brushing her skin, threading into her veins. The air thickened, pressing down until she could barely breathe. The whispers surged. Vessel, vessel. Open. Her body jerked forward. Edward caught her, clutching her shoulders. Fight it, Nessie. Don't let them in. But her mouth opened, and a voice that wasn't hers spoke. I am the door. The family recoiled. Light burst from her chest again, but this time it didn't drive the shadows back. It drew them closer, like moths to flame. They swirled around her, pressing tighter, their forms flickering in and out of shape, faces twisted in silent screams, mouths stretched too wide, eyes like pits of burning coal. Jacob shifted midair, his massive wolf form slamming into the shadows, snapping his jaws around nothing. His howls echoed, but the things didn't flee, they swarmed. His fur darkened where they touched, black veins spreading through his skin. He snarled in pain, thrashing. Renesmee's hands blazed. Light arced from her palms, searing the room. The shadows shrieked, pulling away. Jacob collapsed, his body trembling, his wolf form fading. She had saved him. But the light hadn't stopped. It poured out of her, blinding, endless, a river of fire tearing through the walls. Glass shattered, wood splintered, the house groaning under its force. Bella shielded her, her own body blazing with protective fury, but even she staggered. Renesmee screamed, clutching her head. I can't stop it. Carlyle's voice was desperate. She's channeling them, she's becoming a conduit. Edward's voice broke. No. She's becoming the door. The blast ended as suddenly as it began. Smoke filled the house. The windows were gone. Every wall bore black handprints, scorched deep into the wood. Renesmee lay in the center of it all, her body trembling, skin glowing faintly with residual light. Her hair clung to her damp face. Her eyes flickered, amber, then black, then amber again. Jacob crawled toward her, barely steady, his body still marked with the black veins of the shadow's touch. He reached for her hand. Her lips parted, but her voice wasn't hers. Soon the lock will break. Soon the door will open. Soon the hunger will return. Jacob jerked back, his eyes wide. Bella fell to her knees, pulling her daughter into her arms. No. You are not theirs. You are mine. You are ours. Renesmee's eyes softened for a heartbeat, her voice her own again. Mom. I can feel them inside me. Tears streaked down her face. I don't know how much longer I can keep them out. Edward knelt beside them, his voice raw. Then we find a way. We fight for you. But Carlyle's words cut through the hope like a knife. Every covenant has a cost, he said softly. And if Renesmee is the door, then the only way to keep it closed may be to destroy the key. The silence that followed was unbearable. Renesmee's heart hammered. The room swam with fear, love, despair. And outside, the forest whispered. Blood of two. Key of all. Soon. Forks was no longer quiet. The humans hadn't noticed yet, not fully, but the town carried a weight, an invisible sickness. People whispered about strange dreams, about seeing movement in mirrors or hearing voices when alone. More than once, Carlyle had been called to the hospital for patients who woke screaming from sleep, their eyes glazed black for minutes before clearing. The Cullens knew the truth. The shadows were leaking into the world. Renesmee stood on the porch, arms wrapped tightly around herself, listening to the forest breathe. She could feel it now, the pull of the door inside her. The pressure grew stronger every day, like a heartbeat that wasn't hers thudding in her chest. Jacob brushed against her shoulder. His warmth was grounding, but even he couldn't banish the chill. His voice was low. It's spreading, Nessie. Whatever this is, it's not just after you anymore. She nodded, her throat dry. I can feel it. It's hungry. Later that night, Carlyle gathered them in the living room. On the table lay a stack of old manuscripts, books so ancient their spines crumbled at the touch. There's one place, he began, his voice grim. A ruin in Italy. Older than the Volturi's stronghold. If there are answers, they may be there. Edward's jaw clenched. The Volturi won't allow us inside. Carlyle looked directly at him. Then we don't ask permission. A ripple of unease moved through the family. They all remembered the Volturi's wrath. But the choice was clear. If this hunger spreads unchecked, Carlyle said, it will not stop at vampires or wolves. It will consume humans, the world itself. This isn't about power. This is about survival. Renesmee whispered, then we go. The journey was silent. Even the wolves, usually restless, padded like ghosts through the airport, their human forms tense, their eyes shadowed. Alice hadn't spoken since her last vision. The one where she saw the shadows pouring through Renesmee's chest like a flood. When they arrived in Italy, the ruins loomed like broken teeth against the moonlight. The air stank of stone and rot, though no vegetation grew nearby. The wolves shifted as soon as they stepped inside, fur bristling, ears flat. The chamber was vast, carved into the earth. Symbols etched the walls, jagged lines spiraling into circles, doors, eyes, mouths. Renesmee's skin prickled as she approached the center. The floor bore a massive carving, a gate of bone, nearly identical to the one from her visions. Carlyle's face was pale. This is it. The covenant was sealed here. Bella stepped forward, her voice sharp. Then how do we end it? Before Carlyle could answer, the stone beneath their feet vibrated. Dust rained from the ceiling. Renesmee froze. She heard it. Not in her head this time. In the world itself. A heartbeat. A second heart, pulsing beneath the earth. The floor cracked, lines of blackness splitting outward from where she stood. Whispers rose from the stone, thousands of voices overlapping. The key has come home. The shadows erupted. They poured from the cracks like liquid night, flooding the chamber. The wolves lunged, claws ripping through the dark, but their bodies smoked where the shadows touched them. Vampires struck, faster than sight, but each blow only scattered the things into mist that reformed instantly. Renesmee screamed, clutching her chest. The light inside her burst again, but this time it didn't push the shadows away. It pulled them closer. They surged toward her, wrapping around her arms, her throat, her waist. Edward tore at them, his hands burning in the contact, but they only laughed through 1,000 whispers. Jacob shifted, slamming into the mass, his jaws clamping down, but the shadows crawled into his fur, his eyes. He howled, thrashing as black veins spread across his body. Renesmee's vision blurred. She saw the gate again, towering, pulsing, waiting. The lock thudded with her heartbeat. And then, for the first time, the gate cracked. A thin line of red light split across its surface. The chamber shook. The wolves whined in terror. Even the vampires staggered, their bodies trembling against a force older than their blood. Renesmee gasped, tears burning her cheeks. "It's opening. I can't stop it." Carlyle shouted over the roar. "There has to be another way." But the shadows laughed, the sound curling like smoke through bone. "No way. No end. Only hunger. Only return." Renesmee collapsed. When she woke, she was outside. The ruins were gone, or rather, what stood in their place was only ash and blackened stone. The Cullens stood around her, shaken. The wolves crouched nearby, their eyes wide with fear. No one spoke at first. Then Bella whispered the truth aloud. "The door, it's already opening." Renesmee pressed a hand to her chest. She felt it, the lock weakening. The shadows inside her smiling. And far away, across oceans, across continents, she knew others were waking from sleep with blackened eyes. The hunger had spread. And soon, it would devour everything. The clearing was soaked in silence, heavy and suffocating, as though the forest itself held its breath. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the moss, bending and twisting even though the moonlight above was steady. Renesmee stood at the center, her chest heaving, her hands slick with blood that was not her own. The forgotten force, the thing that had crawled back into existence from beyond memory, stood opposite her, its shape shifting and splitting like a nightmare fighting to be born. It wore fragments of faces, some human, some beast, some impossibly ancient, stitched together by shadows and hunger. It was not a vampire, nor a werewolf, nor anything they had ever named. It was older than their myths. Her parents stood behind her, Edward with his arms out, his stance protective though his jaw trembled. Bella's scarlet eyes glowed, her voice sharp with fury. "You will not touch her." But the creature's voice slithered into all of their minds at once, oily and cold. "She is already mine. The child is the door. Through her, I step into eternity. Through her, your kind ends." Renesmee shuddered. She felt it tugging at her very bones, at her blood, pulling like a tide. Her hybrid nature, the very thing that made her different, was what the monster wanted. It needed her as a vessel. And she could feel herself unraveling. Jacob, who had been circling in wolf form, snarled, but the sound was swallowed by the forest's unnatural quiet. The pack lingered at the tree lean, their bodies rigid, ears back, tails lowered. Even their instincts screamed that this enemy was beyond comprehension. Renesmee dropped to her knees. Her head filled with whispers, thousands of them, all her own voice but distorted, begging, commanding, crying. She saw futures unfolding, herself as the monster's vessel, herself burning, herself devouring the world. She clawed at her skull, trying to shut them out. Bella darted forward, clutching her daughter's shoulders. "Stay with me. Nessie, fight it." Renesmee's eyes met hers, and what stared back was not wholly her. For a fleeting second, Bella saw something else inhabiting her daughter's gaze, black oceans, endless mouths, teeth grinding against teeth. Edward growled, his hands balling into fists. "Get out of her." His voice cracked, the first true sound of despair Renesmee had ever heard from him. The creature pulsed forward, the ground wilting where it slithered. Its shape filled the clearing until it towered above them. Blood remembers blood, it whispered. And her blood is the oldest of all. She will birth me into this world, whether you love her or not. Renesmee screamed. The sound wasn't hers, it was layered, overlapping with countless voices. A fissure ripped across the sky, bleeding red into the stars. The forest shook. Jacob lunged, slamming into the shadow's mass with his full weight. His teeth ripped at its form, but it split around him like smoke and reformed on the other side, barely touched. The creature laughed, the sound like a blade dragged across bone. Bella shoved Renesmee behind her, fangs bared, as Edward rushed the thing. The air hissed with the force of his speed, but the monster caught him mid-strike, curling around his arm like tar and flinging him into the trees. The crash echoed like thunder. Bella attacked next, her shield spreading like an invisible dome, forcing the whispers back. For a moment, just one, Renesmee felt the silence, a clarity cutting through the storm in her head. It was enough. Her gift, her power of projection, of communication, ignited in her veins. But this time, she didn't reach for her parents. She reached for the monster itself. She pressed her palm into the earth and pushed. Images, emotions, herself poured out. She showed it everything, her childhood, her laughter, her family's faces, Jacob's loyalty, her parents' sacrifices. She forced love and memory into its void. The shadow reeled, shuddering as though scorched. It screamed, 1,000 voices tearing from its maw. The fissure above shrank, the red fading. The forest's breath returned in a rush of wind. And then, in a last desperate heave, Renesmee screamed with her whole being, voice, mind, power. The monster shattered, exploding into shards of smoke that dissolved into the night sky. Silence fell. Renesmee collapsed, her body trembling, sweat and blood streaking her pale skin. Bella cradled her, rocking her like a child though she was grown. Edward limped from the tree-lean, his shirt torn, his eyes filled with something between pride and terror. Jacob padded forward, brushing against her shoulder, his massive frame trembling. But Renesmee wasn't relieved. She wasn't even sure she'd won. Because in her mind, deep, quiet, and waiting, she still heard it. Blood remembers blood. I am not gone. You are mine. Her eyes flicked up to the sky. The stars looked different now. Darker. As if something had been left behind. The peace they had fought for was shattered. This was not an ending. It was only the first eclipse.